It's been some time since the crossover movie between Kengan Ashura and Baki Hanma dropped on Netflix, and while it wasn't terrible, I know a lot of people, myself included, aren't that happy with the final product. My idea was that to go over how maybe Netflix could have improved it and made it better.
First of all, I'm not too big of a fan of the movie format the crossover was made in. I would have preferred if it was maybe like a mini-series, maybe around 5 to 6 episodes. That would have given it more time and the story itself wouldn't have felt as rushed. But maybe they weren't allowed to do that, so you can excuse it. But some characters also didn't appear because this crossover is only up until the end of Kengan Ashura and Baki, Son of Ogre, respectively, because that is how far the animes of both series have gotten. At least with the upcoming release of the final season of Kengan Ashura that comes out in August. Now, a big thing to decide on is the animation style for the crossover, as the two enemies look very different. And I know some people may not be a huge fan of it, but in my opinion, Kengan's 3D CGI looks better. Now, a detriment to it is the fact that since it's 3D, you usually can't exaggerate moments in the same way you would with hand-drawn animation. An example would be how when Julius Rhino charges Waka in the manga, he slams into him like instantly. You really feel the impact of it in the panel, but in the anime, he just runs into him at normal speed. Same way how Hatsumi dodging Bando's whips in the manga, he's darting around like this and that. But in the anime, he's kind of just sidestepping them at normal speed. But where it fails, it also succeeds in other ways, as it aids in the making of fights actually realistic. In that sense, it's never static, it's always moving, something's always going on screen, just like a real fight. For an example, the 3D actually makes it so grappling is actually somewhat engaging at all in the anime. With Baki's animation style, grappling would more or less just be a slideshow of two dudes on the ground with shaky effects and light flares added onto the screen. I'm not just really a fan of the Baki animation. It contains too many still frames, shaky screens, and shining lights to give the illusion that it's more animated than it actually is.
So, my idea was just that I would discuss the matches I think could have been improved, or changed, or just included. Okay, Baki versus Oma. Nothing much. Generic protagonist hair guy versus generic protagonist hair guy. Though I would make the fight less one-sided. I feel like it was too in favor of Baki. For example, Baki hurting to punch Oma because of indestructible, yeah, that makes sense. But then Baki just punches through it, no problem, because he put his weight into his strike. That's something you're always supposed to do when you're like striking. It shouldn't change much. Punching through indestructible is much easier said than done. It's only something that the super heavies should be capable of. And I would not make the advance as big of a boost as it was. Advance versus Demon back is cool, don't get me wrong, but the Possessing Spirit isn't a flat up upgrade. It's more like a side grade. You pick raw power and speed over precision and technique, and that's not always the way to go. Also, no Demon's Bane whatsoever was a real missed opportunity. Demon's Bane versus the Cockroach Tackle should have, in my opinion, been like the final exchange of the match that maybe knocked them out, both of them, and then it became a draw. Katsumi versus Saw Pang. Now, this is, however, is a fight I've seen many would have wanted, specifically because both of their dads fought in the first Baki vs. Kengan one-shot by Daro. So it would have been cool if they interacted. It also would share some parallels with Rei versus Saw Pang, since Katsumi is all about speed and breaking the sound barrier and moving very fast, just like Rei. Jack versus Rahen. Now, this fight I think is great, or at least it's my favorite of the crossover. Baki's brother versus Oma's brother-in-arms, you could call it. Also, both on the psychotic side of things. However, I would make the win more clear-cut for Rahen, not just have them end it. Rahen is stronger than Oma after all. Also, I feel like the drugs that Jack hid in his mouth were a bit too convenient. Like, they were just there so Jack would have a trump card to match the removal. I also think the match should have showcased both fighters' skill more. A slugfest is fun, which just a brawl, but Rahen and Jack are also surprisingly technical when you get into them. My brother, who watched the movie with me and knows nothing about Kengan, even commented on how his impression was that Sawpang was stronger than Rahen, which I know a lot of mangas probably wouldn't agree with that. That's kind of a controversial take. So in my opinion, the match didn't properly showcase Rahen's strength. Now, Oliver's interaction with Julius and them bonding over their muscles was my favorite part of the crossover, and their arm wrestling was fun, but I would have liked them to have like a full-on match. Muscles versus muscles and all that. I feel like it fits. Same goes for Shibukawa versus Hatsumi. The battle of the Aikido Masters would really be great. And Gaia versus Mutaba, the battle of actual battlefield mercenaries who use every trick in the book. That meeting was fun, but what were they really standing guard over? Like, they were just guarding that door for some reason. Maybe so people couldn't enter, but I'm not really sure. Adam's banter with Shiva was also pretty fun. Maybe they could have had a match, but it's not super high on the list for me. Same goes for the Doctors. Hanafusa versus Korea. A match between them would have been fun, but also I'd be okay if they just interacted and nothing more. Don't need them, every character who share similarities to have a match. But a match I really wish had happened was Gao Lang versus Retsu. Both are traditional East Asian fighters practicing their national martial art of their country. Kung Fu for Retsu, Muay Thai for Gao Lang. But later they would become the world heavyweight boxing champion when they wish to broaden their field of martial arts. So Gao Lang is a bit taller than Retsu, but Retsu is heavier, so it could have been really fun in my opinion. Now, the matches I'll bring up now are with Baki and or Kengan characters that didn't appear in the film at all. One of my main gripes with the crossover we got was that Wakatsuki wasn't even in it. He's not even mentioned. So what I would have liked is for him, not Saw Pang, to square up against Hanayama. Both are just built different, sturdy as all hell. Both are also just obscenely heavy. For Waka, this is because of his superhumanly dense muscle fibers, but Hanayama, he's just kinda like that. Side note, I also thought it was strange and not really accurate how Hanayama could just punch through the hammer of Burma, and it just broke a few bones in his fingers. Like, that's not an attack you know so like that. So I'd absolutely not have the Yakuza punch clash evenly with Waka's blast core, as they're very different. The Yakuza punch is just Hanayama swinging with all his weight behind it, more akin to the full power punch Waka KO'd Gozo with, or the one he shook Mount Godslayer with. This match, as well as Oliver vs. Julius, is also the one perfect to make a just brutal slugfest where they just go at each other. I'm not sure if they would fight, since it seemed like both Ario and Kaku are retired, but it would be cool seeing them just interact, if not fight. And Joji vs. Doppel, now this is another case where I think they would interact and maybe grab a drink, but definitely not fight, as it seems like Fist of the Seeker characters, like Joji, aren't allowed to have real fights, which is a real shame in my opinion. But they are both the chairman of the respective universe's largest karate organization, so it would be cool. They also have a bit of an animal theme. Doppo is the tiger killer, while Joji got his scar from a bear. Lihito versus Kosho Shinogi or Sikorsky, depending on what you prefer. Just like the others, the theme for this match is clear. Pinch strength / finger blades. Lihito has his razor's edge, and Sikorsky has his absurd grip. Not grip strength, more like pinch strength at the tip of his fingers, which allows him to scale walls like Spider-Man.
And if you don't think that's a fun match, you can switch it up with the cord cutter who cuts you with his fingers quite literally, like Lito. Bando versus Spec. This is basically like War of the Serial Killers. Spec has his amazing lung capacity, which allows him to like wail on you with countless punches for an absurd amount of time. And Bando has his even crazier flexibility, which allows him to basically turn his arms into flailing whips that are too fast for you to even see. Now, Sukune vs. Kyosan. This is basically just a sumo match between the two most prominent sumo wrestlers in the series. Not much to add. But Mukaku vs. Motobe. This would really be really great since they are both kind of seen as the prep time gods of the stories. Motobe actually beating Musashi and Mukaku coming the closest to killing the Connector of anyone we've seen. So that would be really interesting and would we'll receive a lot of weapons. Now, the Battle of the Strongest is a very hotly debated thing. They of course hyped up Kuroki versus Yujiro in the crossover, but never went through with it. And I would of course love to see it. Yujiro is such an aggressive fighter and Kuroki is a defensive specialist, so they would have nice back and forth in my opinion. They've both been referenced as the peak of martial arts and physical force, and are the respected men who the main cast strive for. Though people who have read Omega, which I'm assuming is most of you, know Kuroki isn't the strongest anymore. So while Kuroki and Yujiro have their match where they're going back and forth, I would have loved to see maybe just Shen's iconic, like infamous double pupils just observing the match. That would have been so cool. So those are the improvements I would personally tweak to have maybe made the crossover more fun and a bit more engaging. Now, because the Kengan anime hasn't gotten to Omega and Baki, and the anime hasn't made it to Baki Dao, some of these scenarios, of course, wouldn't be possible because they contain characters or events that just can't happen and they haven't gone to yet. But I didn't want to restrict myself in that way. I also want to thank each and every one of you, 105 subscribers at the time of this recording. It means way more than you think. And as a celebration, I'll get to working on a fun video I've had in mind for some time now, so I'll start working on that as soon as I finish this. And going forward, I will probably make a short for each new chapter of Kengan Omega, like I did for 269 and 270, unless something really big happens that warrants its own full-length video and discussion. Anyway, huge thanks for watching, and peace out!